Thank you for taking the time to join us to watch this video about worship. I wanted to let you know before we get started that during the recording of this video, my internet was cutting in and out, and so my video quality is really poor, and I apologize for that. However, the audio is all there. It's crystal clear audio, and you can hear everything that's being said, and our guests' audio and video are pristine. So mainly what he's saying is what we want to listen to today. So go ahead and lean in and continue to watch this video and engage in the chat if you're watching it. The premiere of it live. I'll be there with you in chat right now. So join me in chat, and thank you for being here to watch this video. I'm so excited about our special guest today. Let me bring him in now. It is Austin Bunker. What's going on, man? How are you?
How you doing, brother?
I'm doing great, dude. I'm just, self-isolating or self-quarantining, or I don't know, whatever the word is right now,
Yeah.
hanging out at home.
Mhm.
So, how's quarantine life treating you?
We're doing good, man. Just lots of working from home and, living it up, trying to stay in as
Yeah.
much as possible.
Yeah. Lots of screen time, right?
Exactly. Lots of meetings and phone calls.
Yeah. Well, Austin, I know that we've known each other for at least a decade, but why don't you introduce yourself to everyone that may be viewing?
Yeah. So my name is Austin Bunker. I'm actually from Springtown. I grew up here, went to high school here, graduated, all that jazz. I actually did go to Hilltop the entire time. From third grade until early college years, I went to Hilltop. Rick Copeland was my youth pastor. Grew up knowing everybody there at that church. But as far as worship goes, I've been leading worship for about a little over a decade. I served with you, Justin. Played acoustic for you. Really, that was my first time on the stage. And then I think you had some health problems or something, and it kind of landed on me, and that was my first time leading worship. And it just progressed to what it is today. I'm currently the worship director for the Trinity Fellowship Church Decatur campus. So Trinity Fellowship Church is a church that's been around for about 40 years. If you've heard the name Gateway or anything along that, we're kind of the sister church to Gateway. So we're a multi-campus church. We have 8 campuses and many prison units that the feed is streamed into live.
So that's cool.
We're a big church. We have a big family, lots of staff, and it's a fun thing to be a part of.
Yeah, absolutely. Why don't you tell us a little bit about Sarah, and tell us I don't know how much you talk about this, but tell us a little bit about your artsy side. I know you're not only a worship leader. What else do you do? In fact, for income even, what else do you do?
Yeah. So I'm married to my wife, Sarah. She actually works at the church alongside me. She is the assistant children's director for our children's department, and she's also the director of our preschool, the Hero Land preschool that happens at many of our campuses. So she's kind of got a 2-for-1 job there. She's good at it. She went to school to work with kids, so it's right in her wheelhouse. But the other side of things that you want to know about is I'm a tattoo artist. And I know you probably love that. I've been tattooing for about 8 years now. So, almost as long as I've been worship leading. But it's been my career, really, that I came to an understanding a long time ago that God gave me tattooing as a way to be another ministry for me, to talk to people, share his love, and really the tattoo industry is an industry that can be considered dark, and really a place to shine for him. And so I've been doing it for 8 years now. It's helped provide and pay the bills while I do ministry on the other side of things. So
yeah, that's awesome. And
I just don't have anything but good stuff to say about you, Austin. Whenever you were playing acoustic for me, you were the artsy guy. And I mean, I've been thinking about our interview for a couple days, and some of the ideas that you came up with were just awesome. And that's just, your mind is so creative. And if y'all ever get a chance to see some of his artwork or his tattooing, he's just incredible. And that comes through in the way that he leads worship as well. And I'm sure that hasn't changed. It probably has gotten a lot better. I wish that we got to lead or play together more, because I know I was thinking about, I don't know if you remember this, you had the idea to combine that Jason Mraz song, I'm Yours, with a worship song. I don't remember what the worship song was, but we combined it up and we made it work, and it was cool, and that came out of your head. And I mean, man, awesome stuff. You and Sarah are such a blessing, I know, to Trinity Fellowship. And so, well, we are talking about worship today. And so what I want to do is get started by just getting a good understanding of what is worship to Austin.
Okay. Well, if you can't tell, I have some notes here. Like you said, I'm a creative mind, but I have to write everything down because my mind goes so fast. I'm going to forget everything I want to say. So I wrote everything down, and I gave you a little bit of a warning, but buckle your seatbelts, because this is the biggest answer out of all of the questions we'll talk about.
Perfect. That's awesome.
Worship for me, and a lot of this that I'm fixing to say is based off teachings by a pastor. His name's Zach Meese, and he was a pastor at Gateway. And he wrote a book called How to Worship a King. And really, I think what's in that book describes my heart for worship as closely as it can. You know, his take on worship is as close to mine, and I agree with everything that he has to say. And I think it's a great tool for any worship leaders. So worship is our first and most important calling as creations of the Most High God. And because of that, ministering back to Him is the number one calling. So we are simply called to be more than recipients of ministry in this life. We're supposed to be ministers of His grace to everybody. You know, we've seen that in the go out unto all this world, you know, unto all nations. But we're also supposed to be a minister back to Him. He's the first person, you know, that we are supposed to minister to. So that's our important calling. And that's where I wanted to start. But really, we worship and we serve a relational God. And I think you can agree with that. We don't serve a transactional God, where when we perform one way, then we get rewarded with a crown in heaven. You know, it's not, you have to do this in order to get this. God is more one-on-one relationship. I love you because you're my child. And so one of the quotes from that book by Zach Meese, and I'll just hit on it for a second because I think you could write a whole sermon on it, is God didn't create you so He could use you. God created you so He could know you. So
that's good.
Worship and prayer are our key tools of communication with God to help build our relationship with Him. The heart of worship says, Jesus proved my value to God, so I serve and worship and glorify God because He is of value to me. So that's just kind of how I view worship in a stance. You're displaying your value to God. When we demonstrate our value, it costs something. So when you put value on something, it's easy to relate that to putting a price on it. So I think worship is often considered a sacrifice in a way, and I think lots of people would agree. Worship is considered a sacrifice. And so when we sacrifice something for what we find to be valuable to us, of our utmost value, that involves a giving, if you will. So we sacrifice, we give God many things. We can give Him our time, our talents, our circumstances when things aren't going good. All of our priorities in life really show what we worship most. So that's why worship isn't just about the music, and I'll know we'll hit on, but it's anything. And our worship communicates to the world how valuable we see our God to be, how magnificent, how holy, how worthy we feel he is, and how life-changing he is. And so I think the best way to kind of demonstrate this in a picture form, here's the artsy side coming out. If you imagine the gospel, what Jesus, did on the cross on this Good Friday many years ago, if you imagine that as Jesus' engagement ring to his bride, the Big C Church, our engagement ring back to Jesus is our worship. So I think that's the easiest way to put it. That's how we demonstrate our love and our value back to him.
Yeah, that's really good. That's really good. And some of the words that you brought out there, I'm going to highlight is transactional versus relational, right? And I think a lot of people get stuck into a transactional feeling or a transactional. I'm going to say transactional relationship, because they think that their relationship with the Lord is fully based on how much they do, right? Maybe it's, I raised my hands in church today. If we're talking about that part of worship, I raised my hands, so surely God's going to bless me more, but that's not what God's after, right? And we actually see that in 1 Samuel where Samuel is tasked by God to go and find David. And he goes through all of David's brothers who are big, older dudes, right? And then he gets to David, who's the small guy. And God says, I don't care about the outward appearance like man does. I care about what's in the heart, And I think that's what the relational thing is you take out that transaction. You take out how good you may be or how good you may not be. You take out how good you can sing or how much money you have or whatever that is. God is concerned with your heart and the way that you posture your heart towards him is what he's thinking about. And we are going to talk about worship. I'll move on a little bit into...
Real quick before
go ahead.
You said posture, and this is really something I wanted to hit on. So Zach Neese kind of explains some stuff, and he dives into the Greek and the Hebrew of the Bible. And the first most used Greek word in the Bible, proskuneo, literally means to prostrate, to posture yourself before the Lord. And it can even be really honestly said, it means to kiss hands towards, which if you think about it, it's just blowing kisses towards God. So that's that showing value to adore him. But the second most used Greek word for worship in the Bible is lutreo, and it means to minister to God. So simply put, there's not a single word in the Bible for worship that includes the idea of ministry to man. Worship is solely meant for God. It's the only thing that's meant only to him. So
yeah, and I think that, just to flesh that out a little bit, I think that when you think about the relational side and where's your heart, when you say that it's solely for him, it's not for man, but some of the ways that we worship him is by serving one another. Right? I think that's kind of what you're saying, but if you're doing those things, if you're serving other people, if you are, giving money to the church or to an organization to help people, and you're doing that for selfish reasons, then you're missing the points, right? And so I think that's what you're hitting on is you have to really be doing it for him. It's got to be for God. And we take care of each other, but your heart is aligned to serving God and to worshiping God. So
exactly.
Yeah, that's good stuff. So, okay. Well, so worship, that's very high level. We're going to just kind of keep going down and down and down here and talk more about stuff. So I think that there are, when we talk about music and we talk about worship music, I think that there's two categories that I want to discuss. There's congregational worship and then there's individual worship. Okay. And so my next question for you, I'll let you get a drink real quick there. My next question is, what is the difference between congregational worship and individual worship?
Okay, so congregational worship, another term I like to use for that is corporate worship. So congregational worship is it's when we come together as a church, as a group, and really it's when we show unity in our adoration and praises of the Lord. When we gather to encounter his presence as a family and we find community in that. God didn't create us to do life alone. That's something that my pastor shares a lot. He didn't create us to live life alone. That's why he gave Adam Eve, and that's why there's so many of us here on this earth. So we come together to work as one body, to really exemplify, Jesus's love and share his love, and work together as a team. And then when you go on the flip side and you go to personal worship, that it's specifically what that word is. It's personal. It's your intimate time with God. It's our one-on-one relationship with him, like I was talking about earlier, relationship. And it's how we build it with him, as his children, child to father. That's our time right there with him. It's going into him, falling into his arms, his embrace, really understanding that relationship with him. And I think our personal worship is really what can say more about our character than congregational worship, because what happens behind closed doors when you're worshiping God, that's your true self, that's your character, that's your heart, and that's something that is intimate. It's personal. That's what you keep between you and God. You can invite other people into that, but God loves it to be just you and him sometimes. So I think that's kind of where I land on that.
Yeah, that's really good, and that's exactly how I feel about individual or personal worship. Is some of my, I'll call them best for me worship moments have been alone in my car with the radio turned up really loud and just crying out to God. And I've just the Holy Spirit just thick in that place, and that's not to take away from congregational worship, because I can also list some really awesome, I think about like concerts, and one of my favorite things to do at a concert, I don't know if you've ever done this before, or as a worship leader, you probably do this, but to just stop for a minute and listen to all the people and this one voice just going at it. You know what I mean? I mean, you don't get that in individual worship. And that's part of what you said, the congregation, or the body of believers, they're really encouraging each other in that. And so, yeah, that's good stuff. Well, let me dig in a little bit more to another category here. So as we're talking about worship and we're talking about worship songs, I think that we have three more categories of worship songs. And so we have congregational and we have individual. And then inside of those, we'll call them subcategories. We have I songs, we songs, and God songs. And so as a worship leader, or as a worship leader, you're choosing songs every week that you're going to lead your congregation in. And you look through these songs and you say, man, this song is very I-centered. It has lots of words about me and what maybe what God has done for me. This song is very God-centered, and it's this is who God is. I think about Living Coat by Phil Wickham, or Oh Praise the Name by Hillsong, or I don't want to sit here and just rattle off. I probably could go, but these types of songs, these are God songs. This is who God is what God has done. What do you see as the balance between, let me put this up real quick, what do you see as the balance between I, we, and God songs as you're preparing to lead worship?
So before I really give a good answer there, something with the congregational and the personal worship that we follow as pastors and directors at Trinity Fellowship is we follow the the tabernacle model for worship. So just real quick on that,
Yeah.
in Hebrews, it describes Moses' tabernacle as an example or shadow of heavenly worship. So when we prepare, our worship for our Sunday morning or our worship services, whenever we have them, that's the model we kind of follow, because we believe that the way that Moses and the Levites, really set up the tabernacle, and there was a process that they had to follow to get into the Holy of Holies, to be with the Ark of the Covenant. That's the same process that God literally says in the Bible. It's a shadow of what's happening in heaven. So if that's what's happening in heaven, why shouldn't we ourselves as worshipers be doing the same thing, if that's what we're going to be doing for eternity? So we follow this model. And when it comes to I, we, and God songs, I think all of them are fine if they fall into that pattern there. There's a whole sermon, there's a whole study you can do on the tabernacle flow of worship. And, it's about sacrifice, and then cleansing, and then, going into the Holy of Holies and things like that. And so really, for me, vertical songs, which are God songs, are something that I want to focus on. There's the I's, the we's, the my's, there's stuff that focuses on us, and lyrically those are there. But I think those songs can also be vertical still.
Yes.
As long as the meat of the song and the majority of it is still glorifying God and giving back to Him and praising Him, I think it's still a song that you can lead, that a congregation can sing. There are a few songs, like you said, that really focus more on the individual, and I think there's a time and place for those as well. Obviously, songs like a lot of the ones we listen to on the radio aren't worship songs. They're not congregational songs that we would sing together, but we still enjoy them when we're in the car.
Yeah.
But on a Sunday morning, you definitely want something that's going to be more vertically based than horizontally based. You don't want to focus inward. You want to focus vertically. Yeah. So, and as a songwriter myself, I sat in a songwriting kind of thing a while back with Rita Springer. She's a great worship leader. She wrote Defender, if you know that song. But she said one thing that was really, eye-opening to me, is that when we're writing songs, we do write songs with the goal in mind that it's going to be congregational, that the church is going to be able to sing it out and worship together. But at the same time, the Spirit gives us song after song after song, and some of those songs may be personal. They may be just for me and God. And I have to discern and pray about if that's a song just for me and God, then that's where I keep it. I don't share that with the rest of the church. And there's songs that are evangelistic, like we talked about, that are congregational, that unify the body. And I think those are great. They encourage us all. They get us all feeling like we are the body, we are a family, and we play those songs to get us going and get us in the services. Before we really focus on the God, we are here before you, laying everything down at your feet because you are of value to us.
Yeah, man, that's good stuff. And I think that one of the important things that you said there, I mean, not that anything you said wasn't important, but one of the really important things that you said there is that, just because a song isn't a God song or God-centered lyrics, and maybe it's very personal, I mean, that doesn't make it bad, it just may not be something that fits in to that congregational category or that corporate worship category that you said. It's still a great song, and I think that a lot of times the three categories, I, we, and God, I think they kind of get mixed a lot. And so the example I've been using is Amazing Grace. And Amazing Grace is obviously a song that's sung in many, many, many churches, but it's very I-centered, right? It's Amazing Grace that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, now I am found, blind, but now I see, right? It's very I-centered. But what are you doing? You're talking about, man, what has God done for me? And here's the important piece. He's done that same thing for everyone, right? And so as we think about the difference between individual and congregational, that song fits congregational because he's done that same thing for everyone. What we are celebrating this weekend, which this video isn't going to air for probably a month, but it's Easter weekend. We're recording this on Good Friday, and what God did for us this weekend, 2,000 years ago, is the same that he did for everyone, right? And so when we sing about his amazing grace, well, that fits congregational. But then you get into maybe a song about getting through depression. And a lot of people go through depression, but that's more individual, right? Because not everyone has been through depression. And so that may not fit a congregational setting. And I don't have any songs off the top of my head I'm thinking of. I'm just throwing that out there as a general rule of thumb, I'm gonna throw you a curveball here. I'm sure you're really excited about this, but what as a worship leader, you talk about songs that you hear in the car, and a lot of those may be more individual, personal times of worship. How do you handle whenever, maybe at the end of Sunday service, you have 4 or 5 people come up to you and say, hey Austin, can you do this song? We need to be doing this song. And what is your process for that? Do you have certain people maybe that you're listening to and man, I know that they know what they're talking about, or do you go and you read the lyrics, or what do you do whenever you get, because I've led worship before. I'm not leading worship now, but man, you get so many of these requests, and some of them are just like, oh, I don't know about that. You know what I mean? Why don't you speak into that a little bit?
Well, I think as worship leaders, we encounter that almost every week. People coming up to you saying, oh, worship was amazing today. You did so good. I just love when you sing. And really for me, I immediately go into a humbling mode. Like, it's not me. Like, and I don't say it like that. I'm just like, thank you, but it's not me. Like, God flowing through me, and really giving me the ability to lead you as a people. And the other thing is, they say, oh, I love this song. It's brand new on the radio. I want to hear it done here. I want to hear it done by y'all. I want to hear you or Haley sing it, something like to that effect. And, fortunately, I work for a church, like I said earlier, that's very large. We have multiple campuses. So when we're picking songs that we're going to do as a church, all of us worship pastors come together and we create a master set list that we choose from. So we have a set list of 40 to 60 songs, whatever time of year it may be, because songs are coming out, and we're interchanging songs back and forth, but we're meeting constantly and talking constantly about the songs that we want our church as a whole to be worshiping with. So it's easy for me because I can say, hey, I'm going to take it in consideration, and I'll think about it, and I'll read the lyrics and all this stuff. But more importantly, I'm going to take it to the rest of the worship department throughout the whole church, and we're going to see and be in agreement or not be in agreement. And if we're not in agreement, then I'm sorry, but it's not going to happen. But I encourage you to still worship to that song in your car, at home, like that.
Whatever that looks like. Yeah. Man, that would be so cool. I mean, that, the Bible says not to envy, but I envy that a little bit. That would be nice, just to have that group of people there to be able to bounce those things off of. And yeah, that's awesome. It may be a really cool thing for, smaller churches to, we're in Springtown, and most of the churches, or all of them, are smaller churches, right? It may be something cool for the worship pastors in our community to create like a Facebook group or something and be able to do that, because I mean, one person's idea is one person's idea, but you have 5, 6, 10 people together discussing it, and maybe someone else sees something that you didn't see,
Yeah.
and they're like, hey, I don't know if that needs to be said, or if we need to intentionally, one thing that I heard Jason Ingram, I don't know if you know Jason, but he is pretty much the author or writer or producer of everything that comes out CCM. Jason said, we put words into people's mouths as worship leaders.
Yeah.
And that's the only position in the church that does that, right? The pastor gets up and speaks a word over people. The youth leader and the children's leader, they hang out and they develop relationships with students and kids, but the worship leader is putting words into people's mouths that they're going to speak, and that's a heavy thing, right? And so that would be cool to have that group of people there that can help you make those decisions.
And I heard Joel Houston from Hillsong say a long time ago, that when he's writing music, that's one of the main things he considers, is that he's putting these words into people's mouth to give back to God. And so that's why he spends so much time on his lyrics, and ensure that they can be biblically referenced, because he feels the weight of that responsibility.
Yeah, that's good. Well, let me ask you this real quick. I kind of took this question out of order. I've been asking everyone at the top, but I just remembered, and I want to know, is there any worship song that you've just had on repeat lately, or maybe it's an album, or it's an artist, or anything like that you have right now? Whenever you said Joel Houston, it made me think about So Will I, which in my opinion is the best worship song in easily a decade. I can't get enough of So Will I. I don't know about you, dude, but when that thing came out, and still, I mean, when I listen to that song in my individual worship time, my personal worship time, it just wrecks me. The specifically the line that says, "On a hill that you created." Right? Like, oh man, that's heavy. But anyways, what do you have?
Well, I mean, talking about Joel Houston and Hillsong, I was fortunate enough to get to, I've done that song personally, and then I was at a Hillsong conference just last year, and got to experience it in a mega corporate fashion, and it's just as good, if not better.
Yeah.
But I don't think I have one song in particular. I go through seasons just like everybody else does. So in those seasons, there's songs that I love more than other ones, because they're speaking to that season. I definitely have favorite artists as well, but I'll just rattle off some of my top ones right now. I love We Praise You by Matt Redman and Brandon Lake. Graves into Gardens, new release by Elevation with Brandon Lake. This Is a Move, Bethel, Brandon Lake and Tasha Cobbs wrote that one. I love leading that one. I get so pumped up when I'm leading that one. Some other big ones right now that I just love listening to all the time. You Are My Champion by Bethel. It hasn't really been released yet on Spotify, but you can find it like on YouTube. So if I'm sitting around and drawing or something, I'll have YouTube playing, and that's a good one. Egypt, new release by Bethel and Corey Asbury. I love that one. It's talking about taking us out of Egypt and walking us to the promised land. But Graves in the Garden is one that I've shared with the congregation in a video at Trinity Fellowship, and it's one that I'm excited to get to play when all of this is said and done. I wanted to do it on Easter weekend. It's, because it's talking about our God that can take any situation and use it for his glory. Like a grave can be turned into a garden. We can turn mourning into dancing, and it's just a great celebration song. So I would say that's one of my top ones right now. And definitely, if you didn't catch the hint, Brandon Lake is one of my favorite worship leaders right now.
I heard that.
Probably because he's got long hair and tons of tattoos, and I once had long hair and I'm covered in tattoos. There's a connection there, but I just think there's an anointing on him, and I'm kind of connected with that right now, and so I love the songs that he's putting out. I find a similarity in those, but I think like I said, you go through seasons where certain bands are your favorite, certain songs are your favorite, and that's a good thing. It's a good thing that worship does that for us.
Yeah, there's the newest thing out that I am just completely hooked on is Cody Carnes' Run to the Father. I don't know if you've got that yet or not, but
Yeah,
that is so good.
we've led it quite a few times. I led it at one of our first Wednesday services, which is our worship nights that we do every month, and it's a powerful song, man. It's one of those that really just, you kind of want to fall to your knees and just like leave the microphone and just sing to yourself, and one of those things.
Yeah, I would lead it. We're doing we were going to do a Disciple Now the end of March, and that had to get rescheduled, but that's the only worship leading thing that I get to do throughout the year now, is I lead worship for that, and some of the other youth pastors and other people from our church come together to help us make that event affordable, and so I get to lead worship in that. And I wanted to do that song, and then I realized that boy Cody's got some vocals, man. I don't think I can sing that song.
Yeah. In C and in B, and it's up there. You gotta have the right voice for that day. You gotta make sure you're drinking your tea and everything. So
yeah, you gotta be ready to go. Well, let me go through a couple more questions here and just get your thoughts on a few things here. We're all in quarantine right now. We're all having to stay home. Churches are not meeting at the building right now, even though the church is still meeting, and the church is still extremely active, probably more so now than it was actually. But what does worship look like in today's world of social distancing? And you can, if you want to speak into this question by maybe answering, what is your church doing for worship right now? Or are y'all doing the same, I don't know how many songs y'all used to do, but the same number of songs, or have you cut it down? Are you doing acoustic, or what does that look like?
Well, so like I said, I work for a big church. So I think for a lot of small churches and small town churches, anything like that, y'all, I don't know if Hilltop can be one that's in this category, but we're learning how to worship through a screen now.
Yeah.
Which is a big difference for people. A lot of people are used to live worship. Trinity Fellowship, I'm a satellite campus. Decatur is, we're satellite. So we do have live worship, and Cole is our campus pastor there. But our services week to week, we get a feed, through a screen. And so I've known what it's like to kind of be a part of services through a screen for a long time. And so I don't think there's been a major difficulty for Trinity people, and we've had live online services. We've been streaming live for a couple of years now. Like all of our services are live. We used to have to do multiple services in a week, and they're all streamed live, and each campus has a camera set up, and so it's a little different now, as all of it's coming from our main campus in Amarillo. There's still a full team. I think only 1 week they went to just acoustic, but they're doing 2 or 3 songs now instead of doing 4 or 5. They've cut it back a little bit, but for the most part, we've stayed consistent in how we go about service. As far as what it looks like as a whole, I think worship is really focusing more on the personal side of worship now. Now that we're at home, and you don't have the congregation around you, God is really teaching people how to worship, in their own comfort zone, or taking them out of a comfort zone, if you will, because they don't have people around them. It's awkward, but it's how we have to do it, and if we still find value in church and in God, and he still deserves our worship no matter what's going on. He wasn't surprised by what's happening right now. In fact, he's using it for his glory, just like he does everything. And so we still owe it to him to come to him and worship in whatever way we can.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's a really unique perspective that I haven't got yet, is from a larger church, what it looks like, being that you already get a satellite feed. You get that. You said you have live worship, so you lead worship on site, and then you get a satellite feed of the speaker, right?
Yeah.
And so, but it's still probably from the worship side. It's probably still a little bit for people that are now at home, and they're getting their worship through a screen. That can be, it can be awkward, and I think that one of the things that's really encouraging for people to hear is, and I don't know if you have experienced this yet or not, but I've seen you do a couple of songs through the through like a live or something like that. For me, when I've done it, it's awkward.
Yeah.
I mean, it's I know that I'm leading people, right? But I'm just staring at a camera, and I can't see if people are like, and that's so much part of what leading worship is trying to help lead the congregation into this music worship of God. And when I can't see the people, is this song hitting? Is this, should I do the chord? Should I do the bridge again? I don't know. I don't know what the people are doing.
Yeah, I think, our job as worship leaders is, like you said, we are leading these people. We are the ones that are the stewards of His presence. We're ushering in the Holy Spirit into the church buildings, if you will. And, we go on the journey of worship, feeding off of the responses that we see, because we are supposed to be leading these people to a place that we've been before, to lead them into the Holy of Holies. And it's different when you have to do it through an iPhone camera or through a camera in any way, shape, or form. I know recording the few songs that I've done and looking at a camera, but there being an empty room behind the camera, it is awkward. It is challenging, but I still have to think that, okay, my people are still on the other side of this thing. Even if they're not sitting right there, they're still on the other side of this thing. So I still have a responsibility to be the same guy I was on stage, to be the same guy I am in front of an iPhone.
Right. Yeah, that's really good. Well, I am going to go to a question about lyrics in songs, and I know that you know the song "Reckless Love."
Yeah.
It was, in some circles, it was really hotly debated about, is this song okay to do? Is God reckless? And so let me get your perspective on the song "Reckless Love" real quick. What are your thoughts on it? Have you led it? Go ahead and go through that.
Yeah, so my answer is real kind of quick on this one. I have led the song. We had it on our set list for a while. It's on the bench right now just because it was big last year, the year before. Now it's not so much, so we don't play it as often. I have led it. As far as songs go that have lyrics or things that cause up a controversy or debate, I think when we get that far into talking about a song, we're focused on the wrong thing. We're losing sight of this song was originally written. I respect Corey Asbury and other artists that write songs, and these songs were probably written in a personal setting, a personal worship setting, and they chose to bring it to congregational. And I fully trust that they wrote them in a worship atmosphere as an act of worship. I don't think songs that are given to the church like that are put out just to be a popular song or to make music. I fully trust the heart of the leader that wrote it in the first place. So I say all that to say, I think it was written with a pure heart behind it, and I'm going to sing it. I'm not going to focus on the debate or the lyric, because the music itself, if it was written as worship from a pure heart, it's not for me to judge. God's the one that gets to focus on that. It's not for me to deliberate if it's good or worthy or anything like that. That's God's job. I'm just going to lift it up and let Him, and I think, I watched one of these other videos that you did, and Lisa said, God really doesn't get offended by our worship. He doesn't take offense to any of it. I think He loves all of it. So I think that was a great take on it. I think when we focus on the little things, it's when we can get way too caught up in it's not about us. It's about Him. It's about the worship. So.
Yeah, there's a Crowder line. I'm still just as huge of a Crowder fan as I was whenever, 10 years ago, eight or I don't know how many years ago it was since we really got to spend time together, but I'm still just as huge of a Crowder fan. I have a picture that pops up every year on my, it's not Time Hop, it's, my previous pictures of me, you, and Zach Coyle at the Crowder concert we went to in downtown Dallas. And anyways, there I see I don't have my thing on my screen, and so I get going. But anyways, one of my favorite Crowder lines is, he says, and I'm paraphrasing this, but one day when we get to heaven, we're all going to laugh when we see how hard we tried to make it and how easy it should be.
Yeah.
I mean, we make something so difficult, and it should be so free and so easy. And just like what you said, Lisa said, that God's not looking at that transactional. He's not looking at that outside thing. We talked about this earlier. He's looking at your heart. And so whenever you sing a song that maybe it's questionable, maybe the lyrics are questionable, where is your heart? And I think that can go even to something else, is that personally I believe you can worship God without worship music, and I mean specifically in secular music. You can worship God. One of my favorite songs right now, I don't know if you've heard it, is the new song by Demi Lovato, and I can't think of the name of it right now, but it's her song after she went through addiction with alcohol, and she came out and wrote this song, and she's essentially saying, is there anybody there? She even says, I've been praying and I don't feel God. And I'm like, that girl is worshiping. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I haven't felt a song move me like that before in a long time. Like that stuff was deep. And so I think that, there's the old adage, anything good is from God. And I believe that. I don't think that just because this person isn't labeled as a Christian artist doesn't mean that God can't use them to make something that can cause people to move towards Him. You know what I mean?
And, I'll speak to that as an artist, not just music, because, I can't talk to Demi Lovato, but, I listen to tons of different kinds of music. A lot of them, my wife would say you can't even understand what they're saying. But I know that the guys, when they're up on stage, I've had the fortune of having friends in bands that go on tours, and I can see them on stage, and that's what they're doing. They're putting their best efforts, their talents out there on the line, and people are getting to experience that. But in those moments, they're in worship. That you can see that they close their eyes and their passions are coming out, and they're presenting them to God and everybody. And right. As far as an artist goes, I haven't painted in a long time, but the same can be said about sitting in front of a canvas, or creating a tattoo. Yeah, I'm doing it for somebody else, but if the heart's behind it, it's still worship. It's still giving of my talents to in the end really make sure He gets the glory, to say that the things that you gave me, I'm using for you.
Right. Yeah, and I think that kind of that's a perfect place for us to kind of close out here. We kind of circled back to the beginning of what is worship. And worship is not just a song. Worship is not just music. It's not just something that happens Sunday morning for an hour. Worship is the way you live your life. And whether you're out doing tattoos, which, dude, I don't care if you have anyone bashing you for that, you let me know. I mean, I'm not a very big guy, but I'm going to get them.
I honestly don't. You know, I'm very fortunate to get to work for a church that loves it, a church that really embraces it. So it's great. Uh, it's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, I love it too, dude. So such a unique opportunity that you have there, really just to reach a unique demographic. And I don't want to put all people who get tattoos into a unique demographic. That's not fair, really, because everyone gets tattoos. I have a tattoo. A lot of people may not know that. My wife has tattoo. You've given my wife both of her tattoos, actually, and so. I don't mean anything negative when I say a unique demographic, but you do know what I'm saying. You even said that, you alluded to that earlier, that it's kind of a dark industry. But man, you get to shine a light into that, and you get to be the light of the Lord in those things, and that's awesome. And so worship is so much more than a song that we lead or a song that we sing, but the way we live our lives. And so yeah, do you have anything you want to say at closing here? Or?
Um, I'm not sure. You know, really, I just want to encourage, you know, anybody that might be having difficulty worshiping right now. Uh, you know, we kind of went through that, but I know it's difficult. It's difficult for worship pastors right now. It's difficult for people that are planning services. And really, I just want to say that, you know, we're called to be priests and ministers. And I don't mean just me and you, I mean everybody. We're called to be ministers of His grace, like I said in the beginning. And because of that, we are stewards of His presence. I said that a while ago. We carry the presence of God everywhere we go. So that means if you're in Walmart right now or anything, you can be the light, like you just said. And so I just want to encourage people to do that, because even though times are changing, you know, we can still do our duty as His children, as His believers and followers, as disciples, for the rest of the world. We can still encourage each other to stand up in the living room and praise for a second, you know, to get out of our pajamas, if you will, or anything that we need to really get in the mode of worship. And I think right now, I've said it in a video that I've shared, right now is the perfect opportunity for us to refocus what worship is, in the personal and in the corporate. And so we need to take it. We need to use this time to really refocus ourselves and push forward as a church.
Yeah, that's really good. Man, Austin, thank you so much for taking the time today to meet with me and to discuss this topic that is really important. Again, I can't say enough good things about Austin Bunker and Sarah Bunker and the Bunker family. I love y'all so much, and thank you again for being here with me today.
Thanks, man.